This is Duke University.
Yeah, I've been very critical of the government moves on the financial institutions. And the policy paper that I posted before the TARP bill was introduced suggested a two-pronged approach and towards the financial institutions. The first prong was an injection of equity to all viable financial institutions. And the second prong was to set up an investment fund that would acquire troubled assets at fair market values. Okay, what was actually passed in terms of the bill was a bill to buy troubled assets. And when they were about to implement that bill, they saw some problems. First, they were unwilling to buy at fair market prices. They wanted to buy at a premium hold-to-maturity price. That was extremely unpopular because it seemed like the American taxpayer was going to overpay. And the second part was that it was just difficult to value these assets. It was going to take a lot of time. We need to do something quickly. So they flip-flopped and decided to inject equity. Now, that seems consistent with my idea of injecting equity. However, what they did was they focused the injection of equity on the very large institutions and indeed some of the troubled institutions. And this is a classic example of throwing good money at bad. If you want to jumpstart the credit system, you need to get an equity injection into good financial institutions. They take the money and they lend it out. And the multiplier starts in the economy to jumpstart our credit system. If you inject equity into a troubled institution, then they take the money and sit on it to reduce their risk. And that is exactly what has happened. That we have not seen the billions of dollars that we put in show up in the loan market because these large financial institutions have taken the money and basically used it to reduce the risk. It's basically sitting in reserves at the Federal Reserve, not going to work in the market. And that is a massive problem. And the scale is huge. And two of the largest financial institutions, Citigroup and Bank of America, are right at the top of the list in terms of institutions that have not really done the job. Bank of America and Citigroup are financial institutions that are too big to fail. So what does that mean? It means that there's no downside for them. It's the classic moral hazard problem where the leaders of those institutions can take bets and hope that there's a great upside, but the downside is going to be covered by the government. And we can exactly see that happening. Bank of America is recently in the news. They took on Countrywide, the famous or infamous subprime lender, and then they dropped $50 billion for Merrill Lynch. And at the time, it was an extraordinary price. What were they thinking? And now we realize that the value was essentially zero. They've gone to the trough for government funding. The government's dropped $45 billion of cash. They have backstopped over $100 billion in debt. And the value of the equity today is only about $30 billion. So one way to think about that is the government puts $45 billion cash into something that's worth 30. So you're throwing good money at bad money. So again, the problem is that strategy has been focused on injection of equity largely to institutions that are not going to use it to jumpstart the credit system. The implementation has been problematic. It hasn't worked. The troubled assets are still there. My proposal on troubled assets to actually go buy these at fair market value, hold them for a number of years, and hopefully there'll be a return to the taxpayer in actually doing that. But that has not really happened on a large scale yet, and our system is frozen. So what do we do? Obviously, we cannot continue to drop large amounts of money on these financial institutions that are at risk. In Bank of America and Citi, we've already dropped 45 in cash each. Now the problem is that we can give them the money, we can write in some bill that they have to be careful in terms of how they compensate their executives. There's no real enforcement mechanism in terms of how they can deliver on what the government actually wants. So unfortunately, we need a new approach, that things have to happen as if we actually owned and controlled these financial institutions. I think the American taxpayer is sick and tired of dropping multiple billions of dollars and not seeing any direct results. So the specter of nationalization, and hopefully temporarily, is basically on the table. So if they are not going to lend this money out that we give them, then we have to make sure that they actually do. The only way to do that is to take control of the board of directors and to make sure that management actually does this. So this has got to be at least a warning to these financial institutions that either they need to radically change the way that they are doing business based upon this government support, or be nationalized. And that's it.